Hi, I'm Tyler Lucius, and I will be talking about the Hopi Indians and their constant struggle with colonization up to present day. This is the Lens to the World project. So basically, what I'm going to be touching on is colonization and how colonization happens all over the world, and that when you're talking about lens to the world, that's what it means. Is there's multiple things that happen within the Southwest that have happened all over the world. So what I'm going to be focusing on is the colonization of native peoples, but the colonization of the Hopi. So I want to start off by talking about golden eagles. So the Hopi have been hunting these golden eagles in Arizona's Wapatki National Monument. Sorry, I'm not very good at pronouncing that, but which is in Arizona, and so they've hunted these golden eagles for generations, and they do this for religious ceremonies that they have, and um, the Hopi have been banned from hunting these eagles by the national park due to conflicting with the preservation of the golden eagle. So let's go back to 1999. The Hopi tried to regain access to the park's eagles, but were denied access. But their request was reconsidered, and a plan was offered by the Fish and Wildlife Service to allow the Hopi to kill a limited number of golden eagles per year. So this plan was later tossed out after the Clinton administration left office in 2001, and so basically it made the Hopi have to start from ground zero. And they basically, in the past, the Hopi have been granted permits by the Fish and Wildlife Service to hunt these eagles, but the thing was they couldn't do it in the national park, and that this the national park in Arizona, the Wapataki, what is sacred to them because they've been doing it for generations, and they can't do this anymore because of the regulations of the rules of the national park itself. So they have been granted permits, just not in the national park. After their plan to allow them to hunt in the national parks was completely uprooted, 5 years later, in 2006, a public forum was held to come up with a new draft about the laws in the national parks. So this new draft proposed that the Fish and Wildlife Service would not be able to issue permits to native tribes such as the Hopi at all. And this basically would completely disrupt the Hopi's spiritual connection to these creatures, and it would really harm their way of how they do things, in their culture. It would culturally impact them. So this is a prime example of colonization, because this is the white man, I guess you could say, has completely culturally impacted the Indians since they've arrived in the Americas. So this is still going on today, but eventually this plan never went through. So the Hopi still are able to get permits from the Fish and Wildlife Service, but they're still not allowed to do it in the place that they would like, in the Wapatki National Monument. Sorry, but yeah. So that's my first example, and I really wanted to focus on this first one just because it just seems like it's such a important thing to the Hopi, these golden eagles, and they're not significantly impacting the population of these eagles. So that's the main one I wanted to focus on, and I'm going to go over some more, but just not as in depth. So the next one I wanted to talk about was the San Francisco Peaks, which is in Flagstaff, Arizona, and these peaks are sacred religion. They have sacred religious meaning to the Hopi, and they were a part of this ski resort expansion project. And the Hopi and other tribes, they got together, and decided to sue the Department of Agriculture in an attempt to stop this expansion from happening. The Hopi argued that the American Indian Religious Freedom Act, or ARFA, wasn't followed, and that the building of the ski resort would ruin the religious meaning of these peaks. It would taint them, if you will. And the court actually ended up ruling against the Hopi people and the rest of the tribes that were suing. And it basically, to simplify it, stated that ARFA doesn't have ruling over publicly owned land, and that it doesn't automatically cancel any proposal, such as a ski resort. So this is another example of colonization and basically the Hopi people getting the short end of the stick. So moving on to the next subject, I wanted to talk about burial sites being destroyed. So the Black Mesa mine is one of the largest mines in the U.S., and this mine was carved into a sacred area of the Hopi, and in the process, it destroyed homes, burial sites, and other sacred areas. So Peabody, which is the company that's behind the mine, that controls the mine, and they were doing illegal practices for several years, and these practices have been purposely ignored by the Office of Surface Mining and the U.S. Department of the Interior. And the initiative to enforce the law has been absent as well. And this is another example of the American government not really having any regard for the way of life, and just doing what benefits them. And this is an example of colonization, and it's happening in the 20th and 21st century up to this day. So that concludes my presentation. These are the main three things I wanted to focus on, and thank you for your time. So you can look in the notes section, and there's some more examples that I provided through my research. So